Welcome to the first episode of Values, People, and Purpose. Our goal is to discuss the things that matter most in your life and can make a real difference. Today we want to introduce ourselves and give you a little background on how this all came about. In the coming episodes, we'll challenge you to think about how values, people, and purpose relates to your life. We promise you'll always walk away with something to think about and useful ideas to use in your life. Take a moment and subscribe so you don't miss any of the great topics we'll be exploring in the months and hopefully years to come. Let's get started. I'm Tim Buchanan.
And I'm Rick Redding.
And we're coming to you with a new series of vlogs that focus on values, people, and purpose. There's not a lot of rhyme or reason to this. We're just going to share from our years of experience, and I think we'll have some great topics that you'll be interested in. Don't you agree, Rick?
I do, Tim, and I think the conversations that you and I have had over the last, 30 years?
30, 35.
Yeah. And how many times that we just get going, and by the end of it, we're going, that was pretty good. Somebody else might really enjoy listening to that. Yeah. So I think I've really been looking forward to this, actually. And so I hope, that there's a few other folks out there that might enjoy it as well, and actually might, get a little interactive with us and throw us a few curveballs as far as questions, that might be on their hearts regarding the issues that we're going to be talking about.
Sure. And this may sound a little strange, but we don't want people to listen. We want them to think, and we want to prompt you to think about those things that are important as we live and work with other people in this world. And so that you don't miss out on any of those conversations, scripted and unscripted, click the subscribe link below. And be ready for some very lively conversations. As best buddies as we are, we still butt heads pretty good every now and then. So you'll get the full spectrum on it. But more than anything, we want to give you some tools and some ideas to just help you in those three areas: values, people, and purpose, and give you some things that are encouraging, things that you can use at home, things that you can use at work. So. Like Rick said, we met many years ago, and for all the different paths we've traveled down, for some strange reason, we wound up right back here in the same part of the country, Front Range of Colorado, together. And over all the years, the miles, and the different callings and jobs that we've had, we've still stayed together. So we're ready now to share that with all of you.
And you're in Elbert, Colorado. You might tell them, where in the world is Elbert? And I'm in Colorado Springs. I think everybody knows where that's at.
Yeah, I'm in Elbert County, Colorado. It's quickly getting urbanized, but thus far we're a very rural area. We sit out with a great view of the Front Range of the mountains. And so Rick and I are kind of like city mouse and country mouse, I guess, when it comes to our living situation.
I actually like to kind of think of us as those two old curmudgeons on the Muppets. So that might help people as well. So we may not have any answers, but we got plenty of things to talk about. And sure. I think it'll be of interest to everybody else. So I think maybe we go back to the beginning, Tim, when we first met. That was, that had to be mid-'80s. And I think I was probably at KSLT for maybe a year, or maybe not even that. But, we had been talking there at the station. I came on board as their director of development, and moved from Gillette, Wyoming, where I grew up, over to Spearfish, where the radio station was at. And it was a great Christian radio station, and had super ministry and some wonderful personalities, and reached out 250 miles in every direction. And it was my job to go out and build relationships with, all the parachurch leaders and church leaders. And I remember we were just sitting around with John Derrick and Mark Plummer and the rest of the staff, and we're Rod Carlson, uh, and we were talking about what we could do to tie the things that bind us together, with church leaders, parachurch leaders around the region, and a little bit closer, and just creating family, and came up with the idea of Pastor's Corner, and a weekly production. And I think it was about the same time as, we're talking about a half an hour, in 20 minutes, half an hour, of the program. Might have been even longer than that. But we, did it in the morning. I think we pre-produced a few of them, and most of them we did live. And yours was actually live. And I just was on my travels. I drove over to Wyoming, and I can't even remember, it was outside of Upton or Newcastle. Where was that, Tim? Where you and Pam were?
Osage, Wyoming.
Osage.
The scourge of Northeast Wyoming.
Definitely God's country. But there is.
Nobody else would have it.
What was the population in Osage then?
Oh, like 250, 300 people.
Probably the same as it is today.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anybody out there from Osage that might be listening, let us know. Where everybody's at in Osage. But driving through there, and I got to go to the pastor's meeting, right? A monthly. I think that's where we met.
Down in Newcastle, yeah.
Yeah, and I think there was, maybe 5 pastors, at the monthly, and I think it was actually a luncheon or a breakfast, somewhere. And you were there, and I mean, it was just instant. You and I hit it off immediately, and then I think maybe you invited me over to the house, and to meet Pam and the kids, and you were working on a project there that just really grabbed my attention, and you were building a grandfather clock, and I think it was from scratch. Was it not?
Yeah. Yeah,
who is this guy?
My son Ryan was a senior at that time, and he wanted to build a grandfather clock, and the school didn't quite have the equipment to do it right. So shop teacher let him build it at home with me, and then he just helped the younger kids during the class period. So yeah.
Well, and so that was an immediate connect there as well, because I kind of perceive I kind of think I'm kind of a Renaissance man of some sorts, but not really. I mean, I just like jack of all trades more than Renaissance. But you were really a Renaissance man to me, because you were really good at a lot of different things.
Yeah, we met so long ago. That's back when I was still sociable.
That's why Village Missions sent you to Osage.
Yeah. I mean, COVID-19 came along, didn't disrupt my life at all. I'm an old hermit, but and Rick continued to do business development literally all over the world. And I took an academic track, got an MBA, wound up top 15 years at Regis University in Denver in their MBA program, leadership and strategic thinking and critical thinking and communications. So dealt a lot in behavioralism and how that related to performance management. So over the years, as Rick continued to globetrot, I had my nose buried in books and writing and research projects. And so, out of his literally global experience and out of my academic and professional background, it's out of that we bring all this. And for me, someone said, of course, like Rick said, I'm kind of Renaissance. I'm got a hand in all kinds of different topics, and but it kind of came down to several years ago. Someone said, focus somewhere. Time's running out. You're not getting any younger. Focus somewhere. And after a lot of thinking and a lot of talking with my mentors and colleagues at the university that I really respected, boiled it down to 3 things: values, people, and purpose. That's where my heart really was. And of course, Rick's heart too. So that's kind of where this all came out of, is to pursue and promote that. Is I continue to develop resources for schools and churches and businesses in those areas.
Well, and Tim, before we dig a little any further into that one, because it's all interconnected as far as I'm concerned, I want to go back, to that first program that we did with you, and just let anybody that's watching this, just be aware that, here's, I'm nobody from Gillette, Wyoming, and I'm just going around. I can talk to anybody about anything, and here's a pastor, Village Missions in a little tiny town in Northeast Wyoming, and I invite him over to Spearfish, and we do the Pastor's Corner together. And we did Pastor's Corner. I was there for almost 5 years, and we did that ongoing, every week for several years. And there were actually, so we interviewed pastors and church leaders all over that 5-state region. But there was 2 that people continued to ask us questions about and wanted us to bring back. And we never brought back anybody. We never, because there was 2, there's so many of you guys out there. And we just didn't have time. We had some really interesting conversations with folks. But the majority of folks were saying, bring Tim Buchanan back. And I got to also admit, because I'm Catholic, you know that, but Bishop Charles Chaput, the Catholic bishop who came in to Rapid City. So you're a pretty good company, you call my wife the Pope. so I think Bishop Charles was just underneath the Pope there. But the 2 of you, we just had, all kinds of people asked. So you and Bishop Charles were the only 2 that were asked back. And there's one thing and I think this is interconnected there, is you brought it up. Actually, we were talking last week about that, the topic. I think you asked me, do you remember what we talked about? And, faintly, and you said something like, local churches might as well just shut their doors or, burn the church down for something. Now, what was that about?
No, I made the comment, and give a little context for it here. That there's been a lot that's come out recently since churches have been unable to meet. That the church now has been forced to really go out and become the church in the world, and and of course I was working along those lines, that we get so inwardly focused that we lose our outward focus. And so I made the comment that one of the best things that could happen for some churches was for their building to burn down. So it would force them to get out. And, I remember one day hearing someone say that they realized that, they could do pottery class at their church. They could do aerobics at their church. They could be in a sports league at their church. They go to movie night at their church. And they literally lost contact with everyone in the world that they needed to be ministering to. And so here I was actually on that program. I think it was a Lutheran pastor from Newcastle that was on there with me. And bless his heart, I thought we were going to have to give him CPR when I actually had a cow. But, it's, and it was at that point when Rick found out I was kind of half crazy that he knew we were going to be buds. So.
Well, and that kind of ties into what everybody's going through today, right? I mean, that's probably, it is actually what we were talking about last week. Just things, what to throw out there, and some things that were contemporary and current, on people's hearts right now. And, for all you guys who might be interested in knowing a little bit more about this guy, is you can go. What is your church's website, Tim?
Okay. www.gen.church.
And it's a small rural church out between here and Denver on the back highway. What is that?
83.
83. And it's out, it's about a half hour for me to drive out there with Kathy and I. And, when they gave us the lockdown here, there's no church or anything. And then, we started hearing about some of these pastors, back east, and some of the, bigger issues said, we're in essential service. And so we can't go into the building, but maybe we could do something as far as drive-in, and those of us from small town, rural America remember the drive-ins that we'd go to. And Tim comes up with that same idea and says, well, you know what? Let's have a drive-in out at our church. And Kathy and I immediately, we said, let's go. Tell them a little bit about that, Tim.
Well, I was talking to someone the other day, of course, with all this that's come up, COVID-19, all of us pastors are talking, and usually I talk to the pastors of the smaller rural churches because that was the area I decided to specialize in. And, it's got to be, and I still believe this, is that churches have got to learn how to minister without their traditional facilities. I think this is going to happen again, and I think they need to be prepared. When I was at the universities, one of the things that I taught in the MBA program was I taught scenarios. And it was very, very hard to teach trends to people. People think in fixed points, we're either here or we're here. And they can't see things shifting and moving. And even Jesus talked about that. If you can see the changes of the seasons, you'll pick up on things. And so, years ago when we had the huge economic downturn, there were companies that actually thrived during that. And it's because they had planned for it. They had a scenario put together. And the plan was in place. And as soon as they saw the trends moving in the direction that they were, they just implemented it. And I really think churches need to do that. Churches have really got to start thinking a new paradigm. I know years ago, navigators said that they didn't know how to give away the gospel without encasing it in their culture. And we're kind of like that today. We don't really know how to do ministry if it's not encased and packaged in that traditional brick and mortar church model. And so I think it's going to be interesting to see what churches are forced to do. And it's going to be sink or swim for a lot of them. And it's going to change the financial model for the churches too. So we'll see.
Well, and so that first service, besides just coming out and seeing you and supporting you a little bit in that, I'm not a member, and it's kind of like we're so close that I don't know if I'd be a good member. But when you said we're going to have a drive-in service, and it was still really cold, and I was thinking, okay, well, some of these pastors back east, they had the cops show up. And they were arresting people, and I just thought my own kind of rebellious personality. I'm going, okay, if Tim's going to have drive-up service, and there might be somebody showing up there, I might want to be a part of that. And Kathy's going, no, we're just going for the service.
Easter Sunday was the first Sunday that we did the drive-up service because I wasn't going to miss Easter. And when I got up to preach, the wind chill was 6 below zero. By the time I got done, in spite of all the hot air I was generating, my fingers and toes, I couldn't feel any of them. But that's all. That's all right.
Every time we
had cops swing by and sit down at the road and watch us for a long time to see if we were spacing the cars out and everything else and behaving ourselves.
Well, I don't know about behaving ourselves because every time you'd hit a high note there, everybody was honking and honking and honking, and you said something about, well, maybe it'll wake up the neighbors or something like that. But it was a lot of fun, and it took me back to my childhood. I never went to one of those church services before, and then actually, I think it was Andrew. He's out. My son Andrew, he's out in Minneapolis, and he's attends Catholic services out there. And he said, Dad, yeah, one of the priests out here at one of the college churches, he got up on top of the church and invited people to drive up. And I hadn't heard that from the Catholics too. So I just want to say you were spot on with that. And that's one of the reasons I love you, is you are such an innovator and early adopter, and you're not afraid of failure. And when you see that not just in the business world or in athletics, but you see it on the spiritual side of things. I mean, that's just gold for me. And so when you and I were kicking around this idea about doing this, I said, I don't know, I'll hijack this just like I'm doing right now, but I just want to have some fun with it and encourage, just like you said, folks, to become involved in this. And I'm going to, go through my whole network and invite people to come on board and send us some questions that they might have. We want to talk about this pandemic that's going on, how it's affected people. We want to talk about, something really close to our heart, and this values, people, and purpose. I want to come back to that time and time again in the books that you've written towards that. And I think that's the foundation and the real answer to why our schools are going downhill, why public school system is in such a,
And I'm not going to be one to pick on the schools. I mean, they're just like all of us. I would say if you looked at the whole broad spectrum, churches have struggled just as much as schools. And, of course, all the schools have really struggled and been under the gun, the teachers too, since Department of Education was created during Jimmy Carter's administration. And so, I work a lot with these frontline teachers. And so I'm not dare going to throw them under the bus. I'm going to throw them a life raft if I can. And we're going to work. And truth be told, Rick was a teacher. And so, we're going to just try and give them some tools and things. And, these things work for businesses too. I mean, we're going to talk about things and values like honesty and civility and empathy, time management, define what ambition really is. We're going to talk about people. We'll get into a lot of things there. We'll talk about things like covert aggressives. We'll talk about the 4 dimensions of the interpersonal mind, which is a really exciting thing that I created several years ago and really helps you understand how people work and interact and what's going on in their head when they're doing it and how to help them grow. We'll talk a lot about the wolves in sheep's clothing, problem people, how you deal with that, what to look out for. And, we're going to talk about purpose and how you can just focus and accelerate. We're going to give you just so many tools. You're going to find some little nugget that can help you out every week. And like I said, we're gonna push you to think and challenge you. And Rick and I are broad enough in our experience and our knowledge and our viewpoints that sometimes you'll be rooting for him and sometimes you'll be rooting for him. I don't know, sometimes you may just turn it off. I don't know. We hope not. We hope that you'll stick with us and see some things. I mean, this is great for teachers, great for small business owners, executives, HR people, just so many things, and I approach things from the standpoint that it's never about fault and blame. The world wants to make everything about fault and blame, and it's not about fault and blame. It's just about responsibilities and each of us getting back to our own responsibilities. And, I also talk a lot about knowing the difference between can't and won't. I think a lot of people can't do things that they get accused of won't do because they just don't have the tools. And if you give people the right tools, you give them the right knowledge, you give them the right insights, I think people will go to town. I really do. And so those are some of the things that we're going to be giving you in these times that we have together.
Really comes back to problem solving, and both of us really love that. And I think, our families are really invested in that. And I know my own kids, I got 5 of them grown and now we've got, 6 grandkids and going on. And we're having these conversations all the time about, what each of us are facing, any given day. And, a lot of it has to do with problems. And what I love about the conversation is whether being a father of adult children, it's fun. And it's exciting, but it's also a little bit terrifying too, because these are adults now. They're smarter than I am, and their world experience is really getting or bringing some fun things into their lives. But I think the enemy of our souls wants us not to communicate, and so we'll throw every kind of barrier in there to keep us from doing that. And that's what this is really about. If you got a problem, we want to talk about some problems and how we're trying to solve that problem, or come up with some solutions for it. And I think that's just life, right? And we can't do it by ourselves. And I know Tim just mentioned, that I was a teacher. I was a teacher for a few years, and then in the '85 farm crisis, we went to Iowa, and then we had to leave mid-year. But Kathy, my wife, she really was an excellent teacher, kindergarten, first grade, and I was just in there really to coach football and track. But when Tim talks about the school teacher, how important these things are to the foundational things, about every school teacher faces this, and they face it not just with the kids, but at home, in their own home with their own families, and then with the parents of the children that they're teaching. And I remember Morris Zempel. He was a principal in that I just loved, Christian principal in Gillette, Wyoming, and I think he's probably late 80s right now. But I remember him telling me, and I was frustrated that first year I was teaching full time, because I was teaching junior high kids in a science class, and he said, Rick, I just want to encourage you to stay involved, stay at it. And he said, but regardless of the frustrations that you have, because he said, you have something that these kids really need. And he said, you love the kids, you love what you're doing, you're passionate about it, share those kind of things. And at that time I could share a hug and a handshake and a pat on the back, maybe a swat on the rear end. I can't remember. Maybe I just got the swats on the rear end when I was a kid, but investing in other people's lives, and you won't receive the rewards of that until 20 years after you've taught those kids. And, it's well beyond 20 years now. And I'm starting to see some of that come back from some of those kids that are 50 years old now. And it's really fun. And so I just, I'm excited about, casting some seeds out there right now beyond you and I, Tim, and just see what comes of it.
Well, we want to help some of those other people to be able to plant those seeds too. We want to give them some tools and resources that they can plant those seeds in other people's lives, and the kids' lives, and their employees' lives, and really see them blossom and grow. So, this first one is just, hey, here we are. This is who we are. We want to invite you to it. I think to be something good to listen on your drive to work, or just to watch when you have a few minutes. We're going to give you some ideas, and we're going to crack open some things here that I think that along the way you're going to get a lot of golden nuggets that'll help you a lot. Thank you for joining us today. Please subscribe to our channel, and let's explore topics together that will change your life and the life of those around you. Take care, and we'll see you next time right here on Values, People, and Purpose.